Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. I'm here with Kelly Barnhill. Okay. She is the author of the When We Were no, When the Women Were
Dragons.
Dragons
Yes.
and the Ogress and the
Orphans.
Orphans.
Yes.
Okay, on español, cuando nosotras fuimos dragonas y la obra y el huérfano. Algo así.
Sí, sí.
Okay. Well, how are you today?
Oh, I'm having a great day. This is an incredible festival. I've never been before, and I'm kind of blown away by just the enthusiasm and kind of joy of reading.
Mhm.
It's kind of wonderful.
Yeah. How do you feel in Mexico?
Oh my gosh, this is my first time in Mexico, and I spent a little time yesterday just sort of wandering around, and kind of wanting to get sort of lost and get a feel for where I was, and this is it's such a warm country, and warm-hearted,
Yeah.
and just like there's people are so friendly, and the smells coming in, like it just the food is amazing, and it's really I love it here.
Yeah, yeah, enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm really having a good time.
Okay. I would like to know as more about you as author.
Mhm.
How as how was your passion for written word?
Oh, so I grew up loving fairy tales.
Mhm.
I loved fairy tales so much. I was kind of a delayed reader, and so so I came to reading a little bit later as a child. But when I did, when I landed as a reader, I loved fairy tales in a big way. My love for fairy tales is all tied up with my love of libraries,
Uh-huh.
and it's how I learned about this magical thing called interlibrary loan,
Mhm.
and they will send you books from everywhere. Like it's amazing. And so I would read fairy tales from all around the world, old versions, new versions, and so a lot of that is what feeds me as a writer now. Like even my work that feels more modern has this sort of it has one foot in that sort of mythic sort of sensibility. And fairy tales are they are an incredible art form, and so my passion for the written word really comes from there.
Okay. When the women were dragons, it's a little. It's a title that I feel this touch important themes mix it with fantasy and historical reality.
Yeah,
How was the process to reading this book?
that's a really good question. My process for this book was different from the rest of my novels.
Mhm.
So my other novels I all wrote longhand. I love writing longhand. It's very quiet. It's very sort of soothing and methodical. But this came out in a really sort of kind of a fit of rage almost, and so I needed to write quickly. And so I worked on the computer for this one, and it happened in three separate sort of chunks of text. These three big blasts, and so then I had these three like big manuscripts that I had to kind of weave together,
Mhm.
and try to figure out where the story was. As I was working, I realized that when I first started, I just called it Rage Story because I was really mad when I started it, and but after a while, I realized, okay, I'm not actually writing about rage. Rage is part of it, and rage
Mhm.
is definitely the catalyst, and remains a catalyst throughout the book. But we don't stay in rage, or if we do, it means that there's some we have problems that we should probably go to the psychologist for, right?
Okay.
It's not good for us to stay in rage. But rage is actually a powerful emotion. Anger is a powerful emotion, and so and it impacts our relationship with memory. It impacts our relationship with how we sort what is true and what is not. It also helps to sort of clear the decks away. It's like a refiner's fire, or like how farmers would burn their fields in between to get the weeds out. And so it was a very interesting process in that way. And so I started to form come at it in the sort of in the as though it was a memoir, because I wanted to explore the form of a memoir as a way of really talking about memory. And so. And so then it became also an interesting process because it was the first time I've ever written in first person before.
Okay.
And so and that really allowed me to ground it in Alex's voice and in her point of view and in her lived reality,
Okay.
While bringing in these more fantastical elements. But even as the fantastical elements sort of become larger and sort of like more sort of unbridled and wild, because we have been grounded in her, we see it through the lens of hyperrealism. You know?
Okay. Mhm. So why did you decide the dragons as the transformation of the women?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, I mean, partially just because of what my headspace was when I started it. The I don't know if you've read the news, but the United States is kind of fraught politically these days.
Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's been nuts for a while.
Yeah.
And it was nuts before the pandemic, which of course is this sort of collective trauma. And because of that, we can't seem to remember past it. You know,
Okay.
like it becomes this block
Yeah.
that keeps us from really remembering what happened before.
Yeah.
And so in the first Trump administration, there was this whole sort of inflamed feelings about our Supreme Court, and there was they were about to select somebody for the Supreme Court who had been credibly accused of sexual assault, and also was poised to be the deciding vote in taking away women's right to their own bodily autonomy. So a lot of us were very
Okay.
upset, and I was so angry. I felt like I was catching on fire,
Okay.
and so I decided. Originally, I thought I was going to write a short story about a bunch of 1950s housewives who turned into dragons and ate their husbands. Why the 1950s, you might ask? Well, because people kept on saying these policies are going to push us back to the 1950s. That was like a phrase that people would say a lot. And so I decided to put the book there because and it was dragons because that's how I felt at the time.
Okay.
And then once a story kind of coalesces, once it sort of like kind of lands on the page, like then that's what it is. There's no really choosing anymore. Like that's the story I got.
That's kind of that's what you feel when you're writing.
Yeah.
Okay. I know your books mix the fantasy and the historical, and you like to keep a strong message in your books. But I would like to know what other genders would you like to write? Sorry.
Can you say that again?
What other genders would you like to write?
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, so it is. I mean, this is very sort of specific to women, and certainly I have like rooted other books sort of in the point of view of a male character. For
Okay.
example, The Witch's Boy, which is El Hijo de la Bruja,
Okay.
and this one right here,
Okay.
and this one actually started out as a story I was telling my son while we were on a hike, and he wanted me to carry him, and he was too big.
That's
so
so
I told
lovely.
him the story instead.
Okay. That's so nice.
And then my very first book is called The Mostly True Story of Jack, which is also from the point of view of a boy. But I have written from the point of view of men, specifically old men, in my short stories, but never a novel. So maybe it's time.
maybe it's the time. Okay, now I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you feel as author that you've been translated in many languages?
It's a very cool experience, and it's a pretty meaningful experience for me too. My la niña que se bebió
La niña que se bebió la luna.
has been this has been translated into 37 languages
Wow.
which is it, I turned this book into my editor with a letter of apology.
Okay.
I said, "I'm so sorry about this book. I, it means a lot to me, but I don't think anybody's going to like it. I think that reviewers are going to hate it. I think that librarians aren't going to like it, and I promise I'll do better next time." Is what I said.
That's
So
you're doing great.
this is it just goes to show writers never know what we're talking about, you know.
Okay.
And so yeah, it is. It's an amazing experience because all of my books are an act of love for me. And it is they come from a deep place of love for my characters, but they come from a deep place of love for my readers.
Mhm.
I had this experience right as when Russia invaded Ukraine. This teacher from Odessa reached out to me, and her students had read the book, and they had made a little movie.
Oh.
And so she said, "Can I send it to you?" And it was like a private link on YouTube, you know, so that it
Uh-huh.
wouldn't it was an easier way of sending things. And at the time, it was she sent me that letter right before the invasion, and I wrote to her and I was like, "Yes, of course." And are you okay? Are the children okay? Are you okay? And because we knew it was going to happen, you know, we knew. And then she didn't get back to me, and then the invasion happened, and then 2 weeks later I heard from her, and she said, "Yes, we're okay, we're fine. We don't know what's going to happen next." And there are these children who this story I had written, these sentences that I had labored over, were living in their heads. They were living in their imaginations. It was informing how they were navigating this incredibly terrible time, you know.
Mhm.
And they had made this new thing, this little movie. It was so cute, and I didn't, and so I felt so connected to them, and I couldn't help them. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
all I could do is say, just tell them, "I love you. I
Wow.
love you. I love you so much. And I want you to be safe. And I love you so much." So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we don't know where our books are going to land. We
Mhm.
don't know whose heart they're going to live in. We don't know whose mind they're going to live in. But I know for me as a child, my books helped me to navigate tricky relationships.
Yeah.
They helped me to understand my teacher. They helped me to soothe myself when I was sad. They helped me to imagine a different sort of life for myself. You know,
Mhm.
and so it is humbling, but also it makes me feel um, so connected to so many people.
Wow. That's amazing.
It
Well,
was a crazy experience.
yeah, but that's the books. The
Yeah.
books are art is magic. Well, as author making in this line,
Uh-huh.
what has been the biggest challenge you faced as author?
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, right now in the United States, because we've all lost our minds, we are facing the challenge of book bans. So, Girl Who Drank the Moon is banned in 6 school districts in Florida, and probably other places, because they never tell you when they're banning your books.
Okay.
And it is this time of silencing, and it is so it is a very tricky time for authors and for books in general. It impacts me less. My writer friends who are Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian, like they are facing way more book bans. My author friends who are LGBT, it's a nightmare for them.
Okay.
It is a terrible time. So I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now as authors. And then, of course, the regular stuff like writer's block and
Okay.
back pain.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
so
this question.
much.
The answers were so lovely. This I'm going to give you my heart.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate this whole country, this beautiful city, this wonderful festival. Every single person here.
Mhm.
it's really a special time for me.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
answering my question. And thank you bueno, la editorial, lo que leemos y Santillana por este tiempo. Ahora sí que nos vemos en un siguiente video. Mi nombre es Iván y thank you so much
Thank
again.
you. Thank you. Thank you.